Okay, welcome to LCARA presentation night for May the 10th. I'm going to be talking about Winlink. I'm going to kind of go through it from top to bottom, so if you haven't used it before and want to kind of know what it's about and feel for it, you'll see that here. So I'm going to talk about some of the different sessions and ways of connecting to Winlink, what you might want to do with it, and we'll go from there. So the overview, Winlink is essentially email. So if you've used email at any time in the last 30 years, it's basically the same thing. Text and attachments sent to one or more recipients. The biggest difference is Winlink is really focused around RF transfer of the emails. So like I was saying, Winlink is focused on sending email over radio. So whether that's HF or VHF, relaying messages strictly over radio between different sites that don't have an internet connection. And that's really the purpose here. So with that in mind, there's some restrictions on Winlink that are important to keep in mind. You have to be an amateur radio operator. Question, Mike?
Yes, I do. You said it doesn't require internet. I thought the Winlink was an internet.
Well, so that's what actually makes Winlink unique is you can send and receive messages when internet links are down because various sites and gateways will connect to each other over RF. So I'll kind of get to that later in the presentation,
Okay.
But the core service of Winlink is supplied by some cloud servers running in like Amazon data centers. And most of the time you're going to a gateway that's connected to the internet that's going to put your message on one of those servers, and that's how all of the gateways sort of talk to each other and interact. If those servers are down, there are other ways for the gateways to pass messages directly that's less efficient, but definitely gets the job done when the infrastructure is not available. So Winlink itself is kind of a volunteer organization. You have to be an amateur radio operator to sign up for an account and use the services. They say it's administered and built by volunteers. They do provide software, a client that you can use to send and receive messages that they ask a registration fee for to support the development of it, but it's optional. If you don't pay for it, you'll just get nagged with a little pop-up box every time you start it. What else was I going to mention about Winlink itself? Nothing, I guess. So the software that is provided by Winlink is called Winlink Express, formerly RMS Express. I'll download that on my test computer here in real time and kind of walk through what that looks like. So right now I'm pulling up a Windows machine that's currently in the back of the room connected to the 7300 that we'll be using for these demos. Hopefully that's visible. Okay, so while that's coming up, I'll mention just a little bit more about Winlink. So it's a network of gateways that are run by individual operators. So for example, like N7DEM, our local Cowlitz County ACS, we have a gateway down at the EOC for VHF. We also have a gateway up here on VHF. And so that's like a service that we provide to the local community to exchange their messages, send and receive Winlink messages locally. Around the country, there's also HF gateways operating on various modes, which I'll describe later on, that provide the same kind of thing over much longer distances. So if you're going out over HF, you're going to be a lot more dependent on band conditions, but you're also going to get out a lot farther. So if there's a event impacting your local area, you're in a disaster site where a hurricane just hit or something, and there's no local infrastructure, HF Winlink is a key piece of the puzzle for like getting communications out of the area to places that do have internet. Okay, the browser loaded, so I'll go to winlink.org over here and download the software. Kind of switch back and forth between the workshop and the demo, and then kind of explanations about what it is and why I'm doing it. So if you go to the Winlink site, there's a download link over here in the title bar. It kind of takes you to this cheesy page, but you got to go to user programs then. And what you want to download is the Winlink Express install. Make that font a little bit bigger if possible here. Okay, so that's downloading now. Trying to decide if this computer is slow or if it didn't register my click. Okay, so where did this come from? I zoomed the wrong thing. I meant to zoom the browser and not my entire remote desktop. Okay, so there's the Winlink Express install zip file. You open it up and there's an install program inside of it. So you just want to run this. Taking its sweet time here. So when you, so this will happen too. This is why I wanted to show the whole process, because a lot of times you're following instructions and they say, oh yeah, download this, run the program, install it, done. But if you got a new computer or something and you're on Windows 10 or 11, and you're going to get this error that says like, hey, we protected you from running this program you wanted to run. And there's no obvious way to like proceed here. I could don't run it, or I could close the box, and either way I'm not going to run it. So you got to actually click more info, and then run anyway will show up as an option. A lot of the radio software you'll find kind of hits this box. So if you installed Chirp or some of the ICOM software, Green Heron, you should be familiar with that box. Okay, then it's just a standard installer. I just walk through the whole thing and accept the defaults, and that's it for installing it. Close some of this other stuff to clear things up, and then hit finish on the installer, and we'll launch the program for the first time. So I had Winlink on this computer before. I'm not sure if it saved my settings or not, so we'll see. Okay, it looks like it did. So normally when you install this for the first time, if you haven't set up Winlink before, it'll pop up a box asking you to register. So normally when you first get in here, you won't have any call signs listed. So you'll just have add call sign, or it'll pop the configuration box up for you, and it'll look kind of like this. So it'll be blank. Ask for your call sign, your password, and then they want your contact information here so that if something goes wrong with your node or there's a problem, like they know who to reach out to. So when you first install it for the first time, you haven't got on Winlink at all, or if you haven't got on in over 400 days, you won't actually have an account in the system. The only way to register for an account is to download the software and fill out this form that's on the screen right here. So you put your call sign in here. N7DEM is what I'll use here. And then you'd put your password in. And like I said, so if you haven't registered before, whatever password you put in here the first time becomes your password. And then you need to enter that password from then on. If you did already have an account and you put in the correct password, once you click out of this box, it will load your information. So I'll show you kind of what that looks like. If I go to N7DEM and click the settings next to it, I'll get that same box, Winlink Express Setup, except it's allowing me to fill in this information. So here's kind of how I filled it in for N7DEM. Put my contact info in there so that I'm the primary operator of those Winlink stations, so that I'm the one they're going to reach out to, and not Butch, even though he's the trustee. You put in your grid square, address, and then just a comment, and that's it for registration. So once you have that in there, the next step to register is to open a telnet session. So I mentioned that there's servers on the internet that you can connect to do Winlink. So it's not just radio, but the internet mode of Winlink, I don't know why it keeps doing that. The internet mode of Winlink is called telnet. So if you select telnet Winlink over here, you're going to be going out over the internet, not over RF. For the initial registration, that's what I recommend because it's fast and pretty easy. The other thing worth noting about this interface is kind of this top bar up here looks like a menu bar, but these are actually buttons in some cases. So like settings is a menu, message, that's a menu, attachments, that's a button. Let's see. Yeah, this move to and stuff. So when you're in the Winlink Express interface, it's important to just keep in mind that these things that don't look like buttons actually are buttons. So always look in the top bar because that's where most of the action happens in Winlink Express, and it's different from most programs that you're used to running.
You're not even moving.
We'll have to experiment with different locations for that before the meeting. Okay, so I've put in my initial registration information that's saved. I've selected Telnet Winlink, which should be the default if you're just starting the program for the first time. And then to actually exchange messages in Winlink, you have to have a session. So that's where this comes in. You click Open Session. And for a telnet session, it's very simple. There's not that many settings, there's not that many options. It's just gonna go over the internet. So if I click start, it should establish the connection. Send and receive any messages that are outstanding in the inbox. And if I wasn't registered before, then this would register my account. If I put the wrong password in because I was registered before, then I also would get an error here that my password was incorrect. But this worked. I received a message, and that was the telnet session. So if I have messages to send or messages to receive, I need a session to do that. Otherwise, the message is going to sit in your outbox. It's not going to go anywhere.
Yeah, to send or receive, you'd hit the open session, right?
Yeah, it goes both ways. So if you, I'm about to get to that. Okay, so that's the basic, getting registered. If you want to go out over VHF, you'd use a program called Direwolf. I'm not going to demo that here. But if you want to go out over HF, almost all of the gateways now that are reliable, work well in noisy conditions, and kind of growing is the VARA. So VARA, that's V-A-R-A, is made by this ham EA5HPK. This is a proprietary modem. So the whole point of this software is it takes data, your messages, and it converts them into audio that the radio can transmit. It also takes the received audio from the radio and converts it back into messages. So Winlink uses VARA to send its data over the RF links.
Do you have to install that?
Yeah, so I'm going to download this now. There's a couple of different versions. Since I'm going on HF, I'm going to get the VARA HF modem. There's a version for FM, typically used on VHF, for satellites, and then the last two are kind of using VARA for other sort of things like keyboard to keyboard messages and connecting to just like a serial console. Let me zoom out here for a second. Okay, so I'll go to Firefox and I will paste that link to the download. Hope that it works. Oh, that earlier thing, it was just loading the downloader. It wasn't the actual file. Okay, awesome. So this one comes down as a zip file too. So I'll open that one up. Okay, so it says run as administrator. So I'll right click on that. Oh, copy it somewhere first before I can run it as administrator. So I'll drag it out to downloads. That way it's an actual file.
Was that a zip format or what was
Yeah, it comes in a zip file, so then I drag it out to an actual folder, and when I right click on it from there, it should give me the run as administrator option once it wakes up here. Yeah, so what run as administrator. Again, there's the smart screen. Windows protected you from doing what you wanted to do anyway. So we'll run that anyway. I don't know if this is going to pass or not because I did already have it installed on here. But I wanted to make sure the version was the latest. Yeah. Okay. So we'll accept the license agreement. So like I said, this software is proprietary. The source code is not available, and the developer charges a license of $69 for all 3 versions of the software. If you don't pay for the license, then you're restricted to the lowest speed, which in my opinion isn't terrible. It still has good reliability and like a lot of the other positive benefits of using Vara, but you just aren't going as fast as you could. It's also nice for testing it out, so you can make sure that it works with your equipment without having to pay.
Quick question. You have to, when you register the Winlink itself, that's well, if you get the paid version, you pay for that, and then you pay for this one also?
Yeah, that's true. So
Okay.
different developers, you're paying different people. But yeah, so if you wanted to license both of them, it'd be like $140.
Okay.
So I'm not going to launch it right now because Winlink Express actually starts Vara for you, and it kind of works better if you let it do that. So I just make sure it's installed, and then I'll go back over to Winlink, and to activate Vara HF, you go up here to the session selector, pull that down, and go to Vara HF Winlink. So then if I open this session, we'll get slightly more going on here. So the first thing to note, Winlink Express needs to update propagation estimates for channels. Do you want to do it now? So because this is over HF, like we have propagation into play, so it actually uses data from I don't know where to estimate how well you can get into the different gateways.
I bet they're using the Whisper's reverse.
And it's pretty accurate. So when you're on there, you can sort by the propagation estimate or estimated link quality, and it's easier to find stations that are more likely to establish a link. So it doesn't take too long. Just going through all the gateways it has information for. Okay, so once that is done, the Vara HF session pops up here. See that loading there.
Do you have a help menu on this anywhere?
What do you mean?
A help, help.
This is it.
Oh, okay.
No, I mean that there's documentation out there. You could find tutorials on like the winlink.org, and there's other YouTube videos and sites you can go to find this kind of information. I found a lot of it is kind of trial and error-ish. And then it changes. So like when I first got into this, like VARA wasn't really a big thing, and now that's more important. There's more gateways using VARA, and it's kind of easier to get started with. So that's kind of the path that I push people towards now.
Can you get the propagation info over HF, or does it have to be over the internet?
Great question. I'll get there.
Okay.
So it started the Winlink HF, or sorry, the VARA HF Winlink session, and if you look in the taskbar, you'll notice that it also started the VARA modem itself, which looks like this. So the VARA modem, it's got these kind of gauges on it, and I wish that would stop happening. It's too close to the top of the screen. Okay, so this is what the VARA HF interface looks like. The first thing to do in here is go to Settings and go to Sound Card. And I'm glad I did, because this is not configured correctly right now. So we have a 7300 attached to this machine in the back. The ICOM radios are really nice for Winlink because they're plug and play pretty much. You install the ICOM drivers, plug them in over USB, and then you have cat control as a serial device, and you also have the audio as a sound card that shows up in Windows. So you don't need an external device like a separate sound card if you're using one of these newer ICOM radios. So in the sound card settings, we want to pick the input. Okay, it's not on there. Butch, would you mind turning off that 7300 and turning it back on? See if that made a difference here. Of course not. It's a live demo. Why would it work? So it's really plug and play until it's not and it doesn't work.
You need to call a tech guy?
No, I think the problem is that I'm connected remotely here.
Mason, are you using the ICOM utility to get in?
No, it's directly connected to that machine.
But I thought you were going over the internet. You're not going over the internet to it?
I'm connected over the Wi-Fi to that machine where it's
locally.
plugged directly
Okay.
in, and I'm doing remote desktop.
Okay.
Yeah, so I set that to hopefully not interfere with the audio. Maybe we'll be in good shape now. Tell it to just leave the sound on the remote computer. Maybe it'll use the devices that are plugged into the remote computer. That would be nice. Cool. Okay, that was the problem. This probably isn't something that you would encounter if you were sitting on the actual computer doing it. This came up because I'm connected remotely to that machine through remote desktop. So if you do happen to have like a ham radio computer and you're remote desktoping to it to do Winlink, check that you have your audio settings to play the sound on the remote computer, not on your local computer. So now that I've changed that, we can kind of see the waterfall flowing in here, and that's analyzing the signal that it's currently hearing on 14 something.
101.5.
So going back to the sound card settings, this is what it was supposed to look like the first time.
Codec.
Yeah.
Is there a reason the frequency is different?
That's just an example.
Okay.
So what you do here is you set your device input. In this case, I want the USB audio codec. That's what the ICOM radios show up as. Same thing for the output. We want the USB audio codec. So that'll send the audio from VARA to the radio to be transmitted. And then the last thing to set here is the drive level. And that's what this diagram is showing here. So I gotta wait until I switch the antenna over before I click that button, otherwise I'm gonna transmit into nothing. So I'll wait before I click it. But once you click it, the radio will start transmitting. And what you wanna do is look at the ALC level and tune it to be about 1/3 of the maximum. So this should already be in the right place. Let me get the antenna switched over and we'll just double check this. Have to get my window out of the way.
Are you using Windows RDP native?
Yeah, so the RDP server is running on that machine back there, and then I'm using the Microsoft Remote Desktop client on my Mac to get to it. The GH Everywhere client, this is our antenna switch controller, so that's just up here at the clubhouse. I gotta switch station D over to, looks like we're on 20 meters right now, so I'll test it over there. Okay, yeah.
Is that switch over on 2?
Yeah, I flipped our physical switch over as well.
Okay.
Can you give us a little bit of volume on that, Butch? Okay, yeah, sounds good. So I don't hear anybody there. So I'm gonna hit this tune button, and I want you to look at the ALC on the radio there, and just confirm that it's about 1/3. Ready?
Yep.
Looks like it didn't go. Looks like it didn't transmit at all. So next question would be, are we pointing to the right radio?
Got about an S9 noise level.
It's been that way for a while. It's terrible.
So it's not transmitting when I hit that?
I can hear it, but it's not.
Oh no, there's somebody else. If I was transmitting, you wouldn't hear anything because the static would go away. So it's not getting the signal somehow.
Is that possibly because the COM ports are wrong, or are you only?
Yeah, no, that's totally possible that the COM ports are wrong. So that's the next thing I'm going to check here. So if the thing gets unplugged and plugged back in, it's Windows, right? So the COM port can easily change to a different number on you, and you don't know what it's going to be. So one of the annoying things you kind of have to deal with this is sometimes it won't PTT, which just happened here. So I'm receiving the audio, and I know it was sending the audio, so I need to go into the Winlink HF session settings and bring up the radio setup. And so I have the 7300 selected, I have USB digital selected, which corresponds to the USB-D mode on the radio. So you have to have it in USB-D mode to make this work. And then it's one of these COM ports. That's awesome. I don't know which one it is. So I can bring up the device manager for this machine. And this will show me everything that's connected. Device manager. And I'll open that up.
Is there any way to alias a COM port? Any kind of to avoid this? I've tried, and it seems like it's manufacturer specific. Like ICOM will have a special one sometimes.
I don't know of a way to fix a COM port on a Windows machine. I mean, think there must be a way, but it's going to depend what USB port you plug it into, what other devices you have at the time. I know like the ICOM remote utility, you set the COM port in there and it's always going to use that. Unless something was plugged in and took that port, then ICOM remote utility won't be able to use it. Okay, let's look at ports here. So this is, the Silicon Labs CP210 USB to UART bridge. That's what the ICOM shows up as. So that's COM4. So that should have been correct. So I don't have a good theory for why that wasn't working yet. But I'll share my my Winlink troubleshooting tip, and that's if it doesn't work, you just shut everything and you open it back up, and it usually works like 90% of the time after that. So we'll give this a shot here. I'll just shut all of this stuff down. Actually, it reinitialized itself. Let me see if that made a difference.
That did it.
Yep.
Okay.
There it went.
Are we at 1/3?
Yeah,
Okay.
maybe just a hair above, but
A hair above. Okay, so I can bring this down a little bit.
I think you were on COM2 before, so you actually may have switched it.
Okay. How's that look?
that looks good.
Okay, so that's the tuning for VARA. It kind of shows you what to do, and you want to set the drive level to where you're getting ALC about 1/3. And once that's set, that's really the only configuration on the VARA side. So VARA just does the audio, and then you saw when I was in the Winlink settings here for radio setup, Winlink keys the radio. So they kind of work together. It knows how VARA works. It knows when it's sending a message to VARA, and it knows to turn that PTT on and off at the correct time. So VARA can do PTT, like VARA FM particularly handles PTT, but for HF, usually you're going to go through the cat control setup. Try to make that a little bigger. Okay, so we've got everything configured. You can turn that back down a little bit, Butch, if you want now.
When would you care about that ALA radio button that was grayed out? ALE.
In the radio setup.
Yeah, see that? Enable ALE scanning. I've run into that on other audio software. Is that something you know anything about?
I don't know about that one.
Okay.
I also don't know about the one above it, the Codan login optional password. I would assume different radio types that you could pick in here.
Okay.
That might come into play.
Okay.
But I've mostly used the ICOMs, and I've never seen that not grayed out. If you do find out what it is, let me know. Okay, so we got that. To establish a session, though, we need to connect to a gateway, and it's not clear what gateway you want to connect to. So that's where the channel selection really comes into play. So when I click channel selection, it's going to load the gateways registered with the Winlink service that are applicable to the mode you've selected. So I selected VARA HF. That's the session that I'm trying to start. So when I click this, it's going to show me all the VARA HF gateways.
Are these guys online right now, all of them? What is this list?
So I can update via internet, or I can update via radio. And this is kind of what Ed was asking about earlier. So if you update via radio, you can pick one of these gateways and ask it for the latest list. And if it's online, it'll give you a new list. If you update via internet, if you're connected to the internet, then you can just do this and it'll download it from winlink.org. The last time I updated this was a couple weeks ago, so it's possible that these guys haven't been reporting that they're online. I think if you don't report your station is online like every hour or something, then it gets off the list until you report it's online again. So it's a good idea to keep it updated regularly. You know, if you're gonna go traveling or you're gonna go out to a disaster site or something, it's good to download the updated gateway list before you go, because then it's saved on your computer. And then if other people need it from you, you know, you can act as a peer and provide that for others. So I just updated this. And the other thing is the forecast. So that's updating this. Oh, that's a different thing than I thought it was. So this shows you, estimates for how well you'd be able to talk to the particular station given your relative positions on the planet, time zones, light or dark, just propagation estimates. So we can see that some bands, are going to be green at certain times of day and some are going to be red. So as you go through here, you have this path quality estimate and the path reliability estimate, and that's going to change kind of hourly based on the position of these stations, the band that they're on, and your location.
But you just updated via the internet. How does that relate to RF? Are they reporting somehow through the internet gateway?
Yeah, so all these gateways that are online are going to be reporting that they're online to Winlink hourly or more frequently.
But I'm talking about the path quality. Is that just how? If it's an internet connection, there should be no path quality, right?
Well, I mean, so this would be our path quality from here to KF7 RFI on 80 meters
Got it.
right now. So it shows you the distance, 174 kilometers at 131 degrees on the compass. Path quality, 55. So that it thinks theoretically would be our best path at this point. Now, is 80 going to be anything but all noise right now? Doubt it. So I don't know if that's necessarily correct. On the Saturday exercise, we were operating 10 a.m. to noon, and we couldn't get into the gateways on 80 meters or 40 meters at all. So we had to send all our messages on 20 through like a gateway down in Arizona. Even the closer ones we couldn't get into. So that was just like where we had to go to get our message traffic through. So as you're going through this, you're going to be trying different gateways to try and figure out what you can get into, what sounds good, what's not busy. So another problem we ran into on Saturday was a lot of the counties in the region were trying to send HF Winlink messages. So most of the nearby gateways that had good quality link propagation, they were busy the whole time we were running the exercise with other people sending messages. One of the differences between VARA and some of the other like packetized modes like AX25 is VARA is kind of a channel hog. So you can't have multiple stations sharing the VARA channel at the same time. It's a point-to-point link between two stations. Got a question?
In an emergency situation, are there any priority gateways that they just make for just emergencies, or do you have to go through? It looks like there's a lengthy process to get a gateway, and if you're in an emergency situation, you may not have that much time.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I will note that the gateways you see here in this list have a group public. So if you're running a gateway for public use, you register on Winlink. That's like the default tag that everybody can get into. If you had an MCOM gateway, then your group would be MCOM here. Or if you were set up in like a specific disaster area to like help increase the bandwidth for messages out of Puerto Rico or some area that's affected by disaster, then you would set a non-public group. Does it really stop anybody from getting into it? No, but it's a cooperative network, and so that signals to people like, don't use this for your test traffic. If it says MCOM, like use it for emergencies.
Okay.
I don't know if that's actually enforced anywhere, but it's definitely the convention. You'll also notice here, these gateways have hours. So some of them are 24/7 from 0 to 23. Certain ones only operate on that frequency for particular hours, like this one's 0 to 16, this one's 14 to 4.
Some of them rotate too.
Yeah, and a lot of times what they're doing is like, oh, well, I'm going to be on 20 for, this many hours during a time that's advantageous for propagation on that band, and then I'm going to switch to a different band for nighttime or something. And so they'll list those separately here. And if I sort by call sign, you can probably see some of these. Just look for some that's, yeah, so this is kind of a split one. This gateway, it runs on 10 megahertz from 7 to 6, runs on 80 meters from 19 to 6. There's different configurations here to serve different needs, and this is really like a global network. So go back to the path quality estimate, get the ones that are nearby that we might actually have a chance of getting into. Okay. And you'll notice I just resorted by path quality estimate, and all of those 80 meter ones just went away. They dropped below the estimate now, and these 40 meter gateways are now taking precedence. So it changes all the time as the day goes on. It's good to keep an eye on that. Okay, so how does it work? How does it sound? Let me see if I can get into the one at the top of the list here. It's 359 kilometers away. So I clicked that, and you'll notice it's got the center frequency and the dial frequency. What it gives you on the channel selection is the center frequency. What you tune into the radio is the dial frequency. Since this is hooked up with cat control, it tuned it automatically, so the only thing we have to do is switch our antenna. Okay, Butch, if you wouldn't mind giving us a little bit of AF there. Okay, so this one is busy. We can hear traffic on it right now. So I'll go back into the channel selection. I'll just kind of tune around until we find one that's quiet. Sounds busy. Yeah, so
Is the program changing the frequency, or do you have to do it?
yeah, so when I click the gateway, it tunes the radio. I have it hooked up to cat control. Yeah, there's a lot of traffic on 40 meters right now. Trying to find any that's quiet.
Can you send something and then it would stay in a stack and go through, or did it have to be open channel before you can send anything?
That is a good question. I don't actually know the answer to it. I mean, I know there's this auto connect thing that I haven't really used. That would be a really good thing to investigate. If you could say, like, sit on this channel until it's free and then, send my traffic when it's clear. I would have to look into that. Yeah, I don't know if we have anything like that. Jeez, they're all busy. You hear Vara on that one? Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's try a different band.
I would try 20.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for. Okay, so switch back to 20 and we'll go to 20 meters. Kind of sounds like there's something there. That one sounds pretty quiet. Oh, somebody just started one. So this is kind of, yeah, hunt around to find a gateway that's not in use, because we're talking sometimes the propagation, go around the world. So
There's a
a
gateway
lot of
beacon
contention. What's that?
Does the gateway, because I was just wondering if that was a beacon we just heard.
They don't
Gateway,
beacon, I don't
no?
think. Sound quiet?
Now you hear a little bit. Hear it?
Yeah. I don't want to step on anybody.
That's kind of quiet.
I'll give this one a shot and see if we can get in. So the way it works, you establish a session and it's going to call the other station. So we can see it's going to make 15 attempts to try and contact this other station. What I found on Saturday is usually it takes like 7 or 8 at least to get through. There we go. So I just... Okay, so we can see... You're not gonna be able to hear it on the video, unfortunately, but the station came back to us, and we established a connection right here, so we can kind of see what it's doing in this graph. And then down here we can see the traffic going in this session. So this is the low speed version of Winlink, so we have 2 quantizations here. If the signal quality is better, then you'll have more quantizations and you can send more data at once if you're registered. So we just got into this station, we exchanged a session, and we didn't have any new messages, and that was it.
Wow.
Okay,
Yeah, good deal.
so your session was just to check and see if there was any messages there to get.
Essentially, yep. So we can see this gateway is keeping a quota for stations that connect. So it says,
Okay,
well, darn it. I'll go to the top of the message and we'll kind of walk through what the session looked like. So we established a connection and it identified itself as RMS Tri-Mode, San Gabriel, California. And it says auto forward via HF if no internet. This is what I was kind of alluding to at the beginning of the presentation. If the internet is down, a lot of these gateways are configured to auto forward messages to other well-known gateways, and it'll just go through and, if the channel's idle, make connections to other gateways to transfer the messages that it's received, and then they'll do the same.
So as a lesson from that, you start with the internet if possible, and it'll backfill you on HF if needed.
Yeah, so I mean, if you can get to this gateway and the gateway has internet, it's going to go over the internet first because that's the most efficient use of the time and spectrum. If there's no internet, then it will use other means to get your message.
So why would
Hopefully
you start
to-
with the HF first if you know you have no internet, regardless? Say you're totally, you had 2 options, internet or HF. This sounds like the optimal way is start with internet, and it will always revert to EHF if you can't work the internet.
Sounds like you're talking about when I was in the channel selection, I updated
Yes.
via internet.
Yes.
So that's kind of a different thing.
Oh, it is?
That would be uploading the channel list itself.
Okay.
So I would go ask a particular station, give me your most updated channel list. And if I was out there somewhere remote and didn't have access to internet, I could do that to figure out, who's online, who's not. Just think about like people on, you're on a yacht for like a month or something, you're not going to have internet.
So assume you've updated everything and you have no internet. Is there any point in starting with the internet and then reverting to HF, or would you just start with HF from the get-go?
Well, if you don't have internet, yeah, you wouldn't be able to update via internet. That's why I was saying, like,
I'm not
yeah,
talking about internet. You're going through the channel select. Would you always try to use the internet to do that? before you go to the HF? Or is there a situation where there is no internet, you would channel select using HF? Am I misunderstanding how the
Yeah,
software works?
I think you're misunderstanding a little bit. So the channel selection, I downloaded this list from winlink.org, and now it's saved on this computer. It's not going to change unless I update it again via some means. So even if these gateways go offline, new gateways are added, frequencies change, etc., my list is going to be out of date until I update it either via the internet or via radio by asking another station out there for their channel list. Once I have the channel list, then I'm connecting to these gateways to exchange message traffic over HF. Always.
Oh, I didn't know that.
If I want to send messages over the internet, I'm going to use a telnet session that goes over the internet and talks to like the Winlink servers.
That was a piece I didn't understand. It seemed like you were doing an internet connection if it was there. You're saying it's always going to do HF.
If you're going over VARA, HF, that's an HF mode.
Right.
If you wanted to go over internet, then VARA would be out of the picture. You wouldn't have a radio. You'd just establish a telnet session to the Winlink servers and exchange your messages, which is basically all the gateway is doing under the hood. So when I connect to this gateway, if it has an internet connection, then it connects over telnet to the Winlink servers and then just forwards the messages between me that are coming in over radio and the Winlink servers themselves.
Thanks, and does that tell you which server it ends up at?
I don't think so. And for the most part, it doesn't really matter, assuming that the CMS servers can talk to each other, which maybe isn't a safe assumption. If there's like a partition between the East Coast and the West Coast, and you're connected to a CMS in California, and someone connects to the CMS in Virginia, they might not get the messages.
It's basically a road map that can change. Usually a starting base.
Yeah, and the design of the system is to be like eventually consistent. Every message that you send has a message ID associated with it. And the nature of the system being public, like if I go to winlink.org, I can read anybody's messages, is that you can send the same message 100 times to make sure somebody gets it. As long as you use the same ID, the systems in between aren't going to waste time downloading messages they already have. So, like the fallback to HF, if internet's not available, that gateway that received my messages but didn't have internet might go talk to 6 other different gateways and say, hey, I have these messages that I need to forward because I don't have internet. And it sends the IDs that you see here. And that server might say, okay, send me, the first and third one. I already have the other ones because I got them from the first guy that you talked to. So the whole system, they're talking to each other, they're interconnected, but they're only going to download the messages once over the radio link. And so as these different gateways that don't have internet are talking to each other and propagating these messages around, the hope is that you find one that does have internet somewhere and then can upload all of those to the CMS servers for anyone to download via telnet or for other gateways to get access to without a direct RF path. You don't have to hold the button.
Yeah, I figured it out. I got a question that no one's come up with yet. Okay, if you were going to send a message, would you have already created the message and put it in the outbox? And then when you made that contact, it would have sent the message out automatically?
Yeah, that's the next thing we're gonna do.
That's what I want to know.
So when you're in the Winlink program here, you got these buttons at the top, and I don't know if there's, so you can go to the message and do a new message there too, or you can click the new message button, which is the little page. You could send like a position report and other types of messages. I haven't really played with these a ton yet. Usually, we'll go to new message. So that's going to pop up a new message window. make this a little smaller so it fits all on the screen. And so from here, we can pick who the message is from. So if you have multiple call signs registered in your Winlink Express, you could send it from an alias or a tactical call sign or something. We don't, so it's just coming from N70EM. The next bit is how you want to send the message. So the default is a Winlink message. And a Winlink message is one whose sole purpose in life is to get to a CMS server. The servers that are run by winlink.org that I described earlier, the ones you connect to when you do a telnet session. If you select Winlink message, it's going to do everything it can to get to a CMS, and then it's going to stop. Because once it's there, you could download that message from any gateway that's connected. The other option is a radio-only message. If you send a radio-only message, it avoids going to the CMS servers. So you got to kind of be careful with these because they're only going to work if you send it to a gateway that sends it to another gateway that sends it to somewhere that your recipient is going to be able to receive it. So a lot of these gateways do forwarding, and this is a way of saying, even though you have internet, send it over radio anyway. It's not very commonly used, I don't think. The last one, which is pretty commonly used, is the peer-to-peer message. So if you're sending a peer-to-peer message, that's a direct connection between your radio and somebody else's radio, and you're going to exchange messages just between the two of you. So like if gateways were significantly down, or if I wanted to be a little more private about the messages I was sending, I could say to Rick or Ed, like, hey, go put your radio on 144.99 and listen for peer-to-peer messages. Then I would tune my radio to the same frequency and establish a peer-to-peer session with their call sign, and we would exchange messages just between each other. If you send a message as a peer-to-peer message, it actually won't go out over a gateway. So even if you connect to a gateway and a peer-to-peer message is sitting in your outbox, it just stays there. So a peer-to-peer message only goes to the peer when you connect directly to that peer. I don't have a demo of that here. It's actually something that we probably need to practice on one of our next exercises, so keep that in the back pocket. For most purposes, we're going to be sending Winlink messages.
Hey, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
When we were doing that drill, we were sending, the package messages, the forms, and to a tactical call sign on the other end. So, just everybody just using Winlink, just gabbing back and forth. What kind of messages do they send? I mean, do they just kind of like normal messages? The weather's so and so here, blah blah blah.
Yeah, I mean, I think Winlink is mostly like test messages and net reports, radio related stuff. In emergencies, health and welfare is a big one.
Right, yeah.
So, like, particularly at disaster sites, like, I need to get messages out. There's not really more efficient ways that don't cost a lot of money or require,
But you still need that end point where you want it to go, right? Like we had a tactical call sign to send all our messages to.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I could just send this to an email address. It's not on Winlink. I do this a lot actually as a test. So I could send it to this thing. I could send it to my my email address here, and it'll go to the Winlink network, and then they'll forward it to my mail server, and I'll get it as an email. And then I can respond to that email, and it goes back into the Winlink network, and I could receive it on Winlink as well.
Right, because you send out every Tuesday, I think it is, you send out the what do you call it? Kind of like a
the
little
test
report.
email. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do send that to some email addresses and some Winlink addresses. There's some limitations though, and the Winlink network really wants to avoid spam and wasting of their resources, which are very limited. Bandwidth on the radio is very limited. So they don't accept unsolicited messages from outside the network. So you have to initiate the email. Like I have to send this to a particular address and then they can reply to me and I can get it. If the message is bigger than some certain size, it gets rejected, and there's restrictions because it's mostly an RF based system. So they have to kind of tailor it to the lowest common denominator, which is 150 baud, over HF, like hogging up precious spectrum. So most of the time, if you're going to send it to another ham, you could just put their call sign in there, or if you were sending it to a tactical call sign, like the one we did last week was WSDOT. What was it? S or something?
Was it .winlink.org or something like that?
Yeah, so the at winlink.org is implied if you just put a call sign or a tactical address. So like if I put this in here and then hit tab, they take it away.
Yeah.
So you can just send it to a call sign and then you can CC it to any other addresses you want, just like an email. So I can just, write anything here. And then if I post this, it sits in the outbox. So like I said, nothing happens on Winlink unless you open a session and you explicitly tell it to go make a connection and exchange messages. It will happily sit in your outbox forever. And once it's in your outbox, you can also modify it, repost it to your outbox, and so it updates there. So before I send this, I'm gonna show what the forms look like, because I feel like the main thing that people probably use Winlink for from a MCOM perspective. It's really the main advantage of Winlink over just sending email is the templates that are built in. So when you're sending a message, you can go to select template, and this will bring up the list of standard forms. And
DOT's in there.
yeah, you gotta find the form you're looking for. So there's like the radiogram forms, there's the ICS forms, which are like the US FEMA stuff. Washington State has specific forms in here that they've got added, and really any group is free to contribute forms to the collection here. So like the ones that we were using for the exercise last week were the bridge damage report and the roadway damage report. So if you click either of these, what it does is it opens your browser and lets you fill in the fields that are defined by this template. And a lot of them they work for you. So if you click on date, it fills it in for you. Click on time, it fills it in for you. And you can just put information in here.
Yeah, just make sure your spelling's correct.
Some people are sticklers about that. Yeah, so it's got these spots to put stuff in here to keep track. It looks nice. You can see the explanation and the check boxes and stuff for going through this. So
Well, the ones we used Saturday has spell check.
So what we were doing last Saturday
Yeah,
is
it must-
relaying messages in from voice operators simulated to be on site, and then filling in the form appropriately based on their reports. So once you have the form filled in, you can save the text data or you can click submit. So submit will tell you that you made some mistakes. And yeah, it tells you what fields are required. Oh, jeez. All these fields are required? They make it hard to screw up. Okay. So once you get past all the validation issues, it'll tell you, hey, to complete your form submission, click OK, then close the browser window. And when you do that, it takes you back to Winlink. and it fills in the stuff that you entered in the form. So this format here is specified by the form itself, and put stuff into the subject. And the nice thing about this is it's not a PDF. So you can send it over radio and it doesn't take a really long time. It's like a PDF is megabytes usually, and most of that is wasted. It's not the information that you're trying to actually convey. So using Winlink Forms is kind of taken over because it lets you send just the information you want, but then it also looks nice when the people are reading it, and it gives you that validation that I was showing, where that you have to fill in this field, you have to fill in that field, to kind of get good usability on it. So I will CC this to N70EM, and I'll now post this to the outbox. So that's 2 kilobytes, which is small enough to go out over HF. So I have that in here, and I have the session already open. Doesn't look like anybody is on the channel right now. So I will connect.
Offhand, do you know what the limit to the size of the message is?
It depends on how patient you are. Like one time Butch sent me an attachment that was like 400 kilobytes or something.
Right.
It took me minutes to download.
Whatever you do, if you're on Telnet, don't send any pictures or anything like that. Because the other person, especially if they're receiving it over radio, it takes forever. And plus he gets mad at you.
I would say I'd probably keep it under 100K. I mean, particularly if you're expecting to send or receive over HF, like here's our baud rate right now. It's 175 bits per second. And did they accept our message? Oh yeah, no, so check this out. The gateway kicked this out because it said it didn't have a connection to a CMS or a relay. So it sounds like this gateway is offline right now. We try it one more time and see if it works. And I can hear the bleeps and bloops. We got a good connection to this machine. It just doesn't have a good connection to the network, it seems like. Yeah, okay, so this one wasn't able to connect. So if I wanted to send this message, I'd have to find a different gateway. But I'm not going to get into that now because who's got the time? We're at the top of the hour, and I'll open if anybody has any questions about what we've seen so far. That was the end of the topics I wanted to cover.
Thank you. That was really good.
So in an emergency situation, like, we would be getting VHF, say, throughout the county to maybe you here at the clubhouse or someone here, and then you take all the information together and then use whatever other thing, whether it was HF, VHF, or whatever was our internet, and get it to whoever at Sacramento or whoever needs to get out of the county.
Yeah,
Is
that's
that-
correct. So we've got VHF capabilities up here and HF capabilities. So this could be a central message hub, kind of collect stuff and send it back out, or collect stuff and do quality control and send it back out.
When do you use, for VHF, when do you use a beacon? I noticed there's a button there that says beacon. Do I do it like when I first get on the,
You talking about this one?
or just a normal VHF, Winlink, let's say for the weekly message, Oh, no, never mind, that would be for, not for Winlink, that would be for the other one. I forgot the name of it.
APRS.
APRS, yeah. Do you use, is Beacon something you use when you first get on, or?
You probably wouldn't beacon with Winlink unless you were running a gateway.
Okay.
So if you were running a gateway, then you might send out periodic messages like advertising its presence.
Okay.
What people often do with Winlink is send position reports. So here's my message. I'm going to attach like GPS coordinates to it, and then whoever receives it can see on the map like where the message originated from.
What software does the gateway use?
So the gateway uses something called RMS tri-mode
Okay.
or RMS packet. Packet would be for VHF. There's also other ways of doing it. So like some of the gateways I run don't use the Winlink software because it only runs on Windows. I'm running those on Raspberry Pis.
Oh, that's good. That answers my question.
So essentially the gateway just establishes a telnet connection to the Winlink CMS servers and forwards traffic from the radio channel over that telnet channel. So anything you can use to pipe traffic from like one place to another and back, you can use as a gateway. There are some nicer things about the the Windows software, particularly the tri-mode stuff, and some of the post office software will do the forwarding for you automatically and allow users to stash messages and then other users to retrieve the ones for them from the same gateway. So there's some of that going on, but from just a pure gateway perspective, at the lowest level, it's just a telnet connection that's forwarding your radio traffic. Anybody had any other questions? I could take those now, or we can wrap up.
Thank you, Mason.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Thanks a lot for your attention, guys, and I'll be hopefully posting this video if it turns out okay for anybody who wasn't here and wants a refresher. So thank you.